Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations in Horror. I'm your host, Kevin Powers. I'm also the owner operator of Something Wicked Entertainment in Events, and welcome to this podcast that is dedicated to the love of everything horror, whether it is from the 30s to the 50s to the 80s to the 2000s to the now. We kind of delve a little bit into all the different decades of horror in order to give you a fuller view of all the types of different films that have been produced since the invention of the great film camera. So that being said, we are also delving a lot into a lot of different subgenres of films. And even though the film we're going to be talking about today is not really a foreign language film, it's still a foreign film. It's a film based from Canada. And so even though we like our Canadians, we want to acknowledge the fact that they produce films that are different than us. And the film we're talking about today, Cube, is one of those really, really good films. I won't say it. I won't be the only one saying that, but at least I hope not. But my special guest for today, Sarah Panazzo, will hopefully have some great things to say about this movie as well. Thank you, Sarah, for joining us on the show today.
Yeah, Kevin, thanks.
So we are delving deep into Cube, the first Cube, because there is also a I think it's Japanese version, but also the actual subsequent sequels and all that type of stuff, because this film kind of came out of nowhere and they quickly made sequels after it became extremely popular with both critics and audiences. So I'm glad to be talking about this film that's from Canada, because we don't talk enough about some of the films from Canada.
I mean, a lot of stuff is now filmed in Canada. We just don't say anything about it because, like, a lot of TV shows, like everything on CW was filmed in Canada. And I think I saw that this was one of the first movies to kind of like put Canada in a spotlight. Because of how iconic this movie is. It kind of starts the whole like escape room genre where like Saw comes from and a bunch of other stuff. And I have been meaning to watch this movie for years, and I only first watched it a few weeks ago for this.
Oh, well, okay.
So I was pleasantly surprised. I had always heard good things. I always knew it was like a game changer. So I watched it and I loved it so much that I then watched the other two. I did not watch the Japanese remake, but I went immediately into the sequel and then onto Cube Zero, which I don't know how much we want to like go into those, but I was aware it was a part of the trilogy, but I didn't know where it fell in the story.
No, it's fine because we actually don't know. For everyone out there, we don't know if we're going to get around to doing the other Cube films in the franchise. You never can tell. It's not on our list, but the first Cube is, and so we're going to discuss that. And if stuff from the other Cubes creep in, that's perfectly fine because for everyone out there, I just watched the Asian version of Cube not that long ago because I didn't even realize it existed until I accidentally came across it, and I had to pick it up and figure out whether or not it was going to be any good or not. So that being said, I ended up seeing Cube when it originally was released. I cannot remember exactly how I came across this film. I would not be surprised if I read it in an issue of Fangoria, or Rue Morgue. I keep forgetting that back then I was both in Fangoria and Rue Morgue and Horror Hound. So I can't remember which one I read it about in, but I had to find out about this film. I did not see it in the theater. I saw it when it came out on DVD or VHS, whatever time period it is, because I'm now confused about that. But I did see it when it first came out, and I absolutely loved the fact that not only did it have an ambiguous ending, but it had a really cool premise. And
Yes.
yeah, I love the premise of this. All these different strangers thrown into this labyrinth maze, and they have to figure out how to get out and how.
Well, and it's such a minimalistic thing too. I think one of the biggest parts of the pitch was that they were just going to reuse the single set over and over again. And I think the biggest part they ended up building was like a cube and a half for when they zoom out or go into different rooms. And it was lifted up off the floor so they could allow all the different sides to be lit. And apparently they didn't shoot it in order because it was so hard to rearrange all of the gels to put on the walls. So they had to shoot everything in like color order based on the gels. I was like, that's fantastic because you go so drastically through this movie. If you go just by color rooms, it's so different throughout the entire movie.
Well, that now gives me a reason to rewatch it and look at that aspect of the film because I did not know that. I didn't know that they kind of built a cube and a half and kind of had to. I thought they might take time to change it all the time because either they're going through the left side room or the right side room, they're going up or they're going down, and so changing the cube around probably they had to shoot it like that. But the color that would make a bigger difference
Yeah.
because back then they weren't using LED lights for everything. So they couldn't
Mm-mm.
just easily flip a switch and change the color.
Exactly. So yeah, apparently it was like 21 days, so it took so long for them to change the color of each room, they had to do it that way.
Oh, wow.
So I think that's very interesting. I love that all of it takes place inside the actual cubes. We never get outside of the cube.
Mm. Nope. And when they actually do, all it is a big bright light. You
Yes.
don't know what happens after the big bright light, unless, of course, you watch the sequel.
Yeah, which really made, oh man, I didn't know what to expect going into Cube Zero, but the ending, I was just like, oh my God, this is just heartbreaking. And now I can't watch Cube the same way again.
That's why it's a good that I put distance. I actually, when I watched Cube, I saw it probably 5 or 6 times between the original release and the release of Cube Zero, and then I just never picked it up again. I'm a huge fan of Vincenzo Natali, who directed this movie, and he's such a creative fucking writer director, and still this is his most well known film that he's ever done.
Yeah, because I did not know who he was when I first watched it. I have seen a bunch of his other movies or TV shows, and some of the stuff he's done is just like he was a storyboard artist for Little Bear, the kids' TV show. But yeah, like I mean, I loved Splice. I love In the Tall Grass. But yeah, I mean, he's very well known for what he does. The other co-writer on here is very big as well, and I mean, even the composer has hit it really big since this came out.
Mm.
Because he's done The Witch, The White House, Black Phone, and a bunch of other stuff.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I
Yeah,
don't.
because I listened when I was watching the movie, I was like, man, all of this sounds like copied music. Like he's trying to like copy a certain style. And then when I finally saw who it was, I was like, oh, okay, this makes a lot more sense. And I love his work. That's why I knew most of it and thought it was all familiar.
What was the composer's name? Because I
uh, it is Mark Corvin.
see because I of the movies that you've mentioned, I don't have any of those scores. That's probably why it just didn't ring a bell to me. I was like, I haven't seen
Yeah,
those.
because those are some of my favorite movies.
I've
So
seen the
I was
movies. I
like,
just haven't listened to the scores. I don't have the scores.
oh yeah, no, he did a fantastic job. Like I said, it helps with the world building, the sound effects of everything going on,
Oh, the
and
sound
like
effects are brilliant.
the like shuttering of the doors and the opening of the doors and everything else that went into this is just brilliant.
Yeah, this is a film I would have loved to have seen at the theater and actually hear it in 5.1 surround sound so that you're hearing all of the sound effects that the people in the cube are hearing as the
Mhm.
cube is shifting and they don't realize that that's what they're hearing. I would.
Because, yeah, that was one of my first thoughts when I watched it. I was like, okay, so maybe it's like, because I mean, like, Cabin in the Woods copies the same kind of thing with the cubes moving, and there's a bunch of other movies that do the same thing. So I was like, okay, well, maybe the cubes are moving and that's the sound. And that's kind of like the whole thing. And then they get into the mathematics of it and everything else. And it's just so brilliantly done.
So I do want to add this, and we haven't even delved much into the plot, and there's probably a reason why. But the thing about the mathematics in this film is, and I've always had this reference to this. Every time I watch this movie and I think about the whole mathematics concept, the first movie that comes to mind is Pi. If you've seen Pi, I just think about that every time. And Pi, I absolutely freaking love. I love Pi. Every time I watch that movie, I find something new that I didn't realize before. It makes you think. And that's what this movie does for me. It makes me think. I put that up there with Pi because those are two movies that I can rewatch and rewatch, and I seem to learn something new every time. But the idea of adding mathematics into it is also a brilliant concept that doesn't get used enough, in my opinion.
Well, and the fact that they had an actual math consultant on the movie is genius. There's a couple of articles with the guy about how he did that and like the drawings they did to get everything kind of ironed out. But the guy's got a PhD in mathematics.
Mm.
and he was published like 40 something times for like just crazy brilliant different things that I was like, holy shit, I didn't even know this could be a real thing, and all of a sudden you're using it for a horror movie. Like, it's genius.
Math is the universal language of the universe. And horror films, that obviously. So, just a brief plot, because it is a brief plot. You learn a lot about the stuff as the film goes on. But for those of you who have never seen Cube, essentially these group of people who don't know each other and don't remember how they got there are find themselves in this cube. Every doorway to the each side of the cube leads to another cube, but each of those additional cubes may or may not have a trap in. Very similar to something that might be seen in Saw. So every time you step in the cube, you don't know if you're going to live, you're going to die. And that's what makes it compelling. And that's when they start adding in the stuff about mathematics, and you have to be aware of your background and your foreground. And as these people they first start to work together, but as the pressure and time draws on, the cracks between all the characters start to show. They start revealing secrets and individualities between them that kind of leads some of them to no longer want to work together, but to actually work against each other. And so some of those people who feel guilt actually end up working together at some point. And I like that contrast in the film. All the characters are different. All the characters have a different reason for being stuck in the cube. They have a purpose. They just haven't realized what it is yet. And as the characters realize that, the audience realizes it. And
And
that's what makes it interesting.
I think that's what I like the most out of why I like this one the most out of the three is because it's very ambiguous as to why these people are in here. They never really explain it. It's like a whole thing that they talk about over and over again about like, was it a government thing? Is it aliens? Is this a sick game played by rich people? And there's nothing that ties them together. There's the one guy who says how he worked on it, but nobody else has any other influence on the actual cube, whereas the other movies, the people are activists or actively working against the company who made the cube. So there's a reason why they're in there, whereas this, it could have happened to anybody, good, bad, whatever.
Yeah, I think that's where I see my Saw parallels, because with the first Saw, you don't really get an idea of why these people are there, because they haven't established who Tobin Bell's character is in the first film as much. But as those films went along, they tried to give you a reason why all the people are in that situation. And they tried to explain too much as they expanded the story. And I think that's what happened with this as well. With the sequels, they tried to give a reason for why the first film existed. Sometimes that ruins the ambiguity and the mystique of the original. I saw that in the Platform 2. The Platform 2 is not nearly as interesting as the first one because they try to explain too much shit. It gets a little bit more political in the second one. I see that as sometimes that's a problem with sequels who think that they have to explain more shit.
Yeah, and I feel like that's what happened with Cube 2 because they went like full sci-fi and they tried so hard and everybody had something to do with the thing there and everything, and I was just like, this is too much. It's jumped the shark already, and it's just a lot. There's like parallel universes and changes of gravity, and it gets to be a lot. And then I really liked Cube Zero because it goes back to the basics of the first one. It explains a little bit more without fully telling you everything. But you get to see the inner workings of it. I like seeing the like behind the scenes of how everything runs. And like I said, it just makes the ending of the first one that much sadder because you know what's going to happen.
uh, well, I guess I will have to go back and watch the sequels. I do have to make mention of most of the actors in this film were completely unrecognizable to me when I saw it originally. But of course, Nicole Duboye, how do you pronounce her last name?
I have no idea.
Well, Nicole obviously went off to go do Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, I mean, almost everybody in this went off to do other things, whether they went
Hey,
off to write and direct or they're
uh,
like acting in everything, as like side characters in TV shows and stuff like
oh, okay.
that.
See, I gotta watch more TV. Everyone out there, I don't watch enough TV, I guess. I just happen to know she was in there since I watched Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I didn't recognize any of
Yeah,
the
because the first
actors.
person,
Huh?
but yeah, the first person Alderson who dies, I know him really well from like everything on CW. He's been like Death and a bunch of other like dark characters. He always ends up playing like the Grim Reaper or something. Um, who was it? David Hewlett ended up went and did like a ton of stuff that he is known for. And I
That's
mean, it's funny because all of them end up crossing paths. Uh, so he's done a lot of the stuff that the director has done in other things, but like he was on Stargate Atlantis. He was in The Shape
didn't
of
watch.
Water.
Was he
So
in Shape of Water? Oh, see, okay.
yeah,
I love that movie too, but I
I
haven't seen the
know.
movie. I haven't seen that movie enough. I need to see that more. Which is good. I mean, like I said, the one thing I took from the original movie of this was is Vincenzo Natali, and I followed him. I still follow his work and try to watch his work when I realize that he is doing a new film, which
Yes.
they don't actually like. There's not as much fanfare with this director. And Splice being, I think, probably his last biggest film before he did In the Tall Grass, which I loved In the Tall Grass.
Yes.
But I didn't remember hearing a whole lot about that movie because
No, it was straight to Netflix because it was part of their whole like Halloween grouping that they used to do where they would release like four really good indie flicks for Halloween. But yeah, I mean, with Splice, I feel like that was his next big one. I mean, I know he did a bunch of directing for TV shows like he directed the TV movie of Tremors. He was on Westworld, The Stand, Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, Peripheral, Lost in Space, American Gods. It just keeps going on. Like
ah,
any big sci-fi TV series, he has directed episodes for, um,
interesting.
and wrote quite a bit as well. So I'm interested to see if he does anything in the future because it's been a while since he's done an actual movie.
Yeah, In the Tall Grass was what, 3 years
20,
ago?
2019.
Shit, is it that old?
Yeah.
God, I did not realize that that was that old. So I must have not have watched that when it first came out. Interesting.
Yeah, because he did this in 98 and then he did Splice in '09.
Mhm.
That was in 2019. So yeah, like every 10 years he's been putting out like a movie. Otherwise it's just TV series in between. And I wish he did more, but you know what? If he releases less and they're still as good as the rest of his other movies have been, then you know what? Good for him.
Well, he reminds me of the director David Slade, who did Hard Candy and 30 Days a Night and the third Twilight. And then he went off to do tons of horror for television. And then he occasionally does a movie. And I'm like, oh man, those talented individuals are just not. They don't, I'm hoping that they just love working in television and not that they're not just given opportunities to direct more feature films. I know Vincenzo now leaves likes to go back and forth between sci-fi and horror or just add elements of both. So his films are a little bit odd. But like David Slade, I like, dude, he did 30 Days of Night. He brought back very vicious vampires, and then
Yeah.
he went off to go do Twilight number 3. Uh,
Two different ends of the spectrum.
it is. It is. It's so crazy, but I still love his work, which is kind of crazy. Uh, but Cube, Cube is this odd horror film because it's more sci-fi based, and even with the math elements, sci-fi based. But like we've said, it really there's a lot of parallels to stuff like Saw in this film, and you see it when people die in this film.
Yeah, it is quite gruesome and it influenced a lot of like major kills in other movies like the grid kill in what was it, Resident Evil?
Resident Evil. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some of it's so genius. You're watching a guy get water sprayed at him, and you're like, okay, cool. He gets a shower, he starts drinking it. He's like, oh, yeah. And then skin starts melting and everything else. And it's just so vicious.
Yeah, I hate to see how they had to clean all that stuff up because the visual effects are still excellent. They don't all look like they're CGI.
Well,
So
and the fact that it was like donated visual effects too, they did not end up paying for any of the VFX because who was it? Core, which was the special effects company, wanted to support the Toronto film industry.
mm,
So they basically cut their budget almost in half just by having free special effects.
nice.
But yeah, I mean, like the deaths in this can be crazy between like the guy getting cut and dragged on the wall, which you're waiting for like the whole movie. You just want that guy to die. And then everybody else were like, you're just slowly seeing people get injured or just the gruesome stuff that happens in room to room, even as they're testing with the shoes. It's it's very interesting how different they were able to do each cube.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think was it Worth? The Worth, the guy who worked for the to build the.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
Worth, Worth gets dragged through hell in this movie.
He really does. And it's really like I said, at the end it's really cool that like what's his name?
Mhm.
Kazan gets out, but then like Worth fights this entire movie and basically sacrifices being stuck in the cube to
Mhm.
kill the other guy. So
Yeah, but that was such a great kill.
it really was.
Stuck in between the outside world and the cube as it's shifting. I really that's still I love that scene when I first saw the movie, and I still love the scene now. I do feel a little bad that Nicole's character gets killed the way she does, but
Yeah.
uh, um, because what happens is, and people who have listened to the podcast what hears me say this a lot because unfortunately I reference this movie a lot because I see so many people being influenced by the way this movie's plot is done, which is Night of the Living Dead, which is about a bunch of people stuck in a house where they can't agree on anything and eventually they all die. This film is like a reverse of that for me. They all start off working with each other and then it de-evolves as time goes on.
It's
And
very much like which one was it? Saw 2, where they had all the people in the house, and if they would have worked together,
oh
they would
yeah,
have
yeah.
escaped. And it's like, okay, so this is obviously where it gets together because like this first one, they literally put the people in there so they can understand and try to escape.
Mhm.
Like they leave in Levin her glasses so she can read the numbers and everything else. And it's like, okay, so this works so well. Like there's the medic, there's the pusher, there's everything so that they can keep going.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, the later ones kind of fall away from that, which is like I said, they try and make it a little more specific as to why they're there, which is now it's like, okay, it's a team building exercise, except you're gonna die.
Oh, well, it could be like Severance, team building.
Yeah.
um, but I think, and I don't recall if Vincenzo Nelli had anything to do with the sequels either. Um,
I don't think so.
so I think this is like another one of those franchises where the original creators end up selling the movie, and I hate when this happens. They sell the movie, not realizing it's going to be a huge hit. Then the studio who owns it decides to just do their own sequels to make more money, and then the original creative people have nothing to say or do with the rest of the movies. I mean, that's unfortunate. And I know I remember when Cube 2 came out, it got bad reviews. It got bad reviews. I didn't think it was all that bad. I thought it was entertaining, but it just wasn't like the first movie. I'm like you, as I enjoyed Cube Zero a lot more than I did Hyper.
Yes.
And then, like I said, for the longest time, I'd watched the first Cube a lot, and then after the third movie, I was kind of, oh man. And then I put the entire franchise down, and I hadn't watched it since this time. So I can't remember when Cube Zero came out, but you can probably look and see how long
It's yeah, it's like every 2 years they came out with one. So they really like churned them out because it was 97. 2002, and then 2004.
So it's probably been about 2004, 2005 since I last saw this movie before we talked about it. So it's been a good amount of time. So
Yeah, I know that they've been in talks for years about there was a Cube 3D during the whole like 3D phase of horror films, and then 2015 they were talking about doing a remake,
Mhm.
which I was like, I don't know why you would need a remake. An extension of the universe and having another one where you have a bunch of people in there, cool, but I don't want a remake. Like, it's
Well, the
great.
problem with doing a remake, and for anyone who's seen the Asian version, the because that I don't think it ever got I don't think that one got a theatrical release here. I think it just went straight to
I think
DVD.
so, yeah.
But it probably played really well at the theaters overseas. But
Hmm.
you try and do a remake of Cube, and you already know how the trick of the whole damn thing.
Yeah.
So trying to come up with a whole new trick in order to make the whole film compelling is going to be hard. It's kind of like trying to redo Usual Suspects. We know the trick now. Why would you
Yeah.
do a remake of Usual Suspects? We know what you have to try really hard to dupe the audience into knowing who is Kaiser Sose and and what the cube is. We already know what the cube is. Well,
Well, and see, that's what I think they tried to do with the second one is they tried to make it more, and it ended up just kind of ruining it, whereas Cube Zero extended it just enough that left us curious and we could see what was going on. So I'd be interested to see more of what the cube can do. Otherwise, I was fully expecting at some point them to like escape and to end up in another cube, and there's just multiple giant cubes with all the little cubes inside. I was like, this would be terrifying.
that does remind me of some movie that I've seen. I can't think of it offhand, but yeah, those films that try to think of quantum things. So you escape one, but then it opens up a vast universe of multiple different things like that. And I can't. There's a film out there that has something to do with that. I just can't think of it right now, unfortunately. I probably should have mentioned it, everybody, because now you're probably going to be thinking about this film that I'm talking about that I can't remember to save my life. But we've talked a lot about now. Do you think this is a very effective film? So
Yeah, I mean it's very effective. It was very you can see the inspiration in more modern films of like I said Saw, I mean even Escape Room. And some of the smaller influences it's had on like the end of Cabin in the Woods where you've got all the monsters in the pods. Um, but it's such a basic concept that is just brilliant, and it's brilliantly done with how little they actually have. Because like you said, there's like no food, there's no water, so like part of their outfits is like buttons, and they start sucking on the buttons to create saliva. They use their shoes to test rooms until they find out which ones are safe. I sat there the entire movie like, God, the upper body strength on some of these people trying to monkey bars and climb up into the ceiling to get through doors is unbelievable. But like, the writing might have been seen as a little weak for in the 90s because it really is like a 90s flick, but it had a lot to say about just like existential life and like
yeah.
what is the meaning of this? What is the point of this? So there was a lot of heavy quoting that makes you think about life in general and how things are going.
Yeah, because when they have those quiet moments where they're stuck in a single cube for a few moments, they have these conversations. All the characters have these conversations about why they're there, who put them there, what's it all mean, and each one of them ends up having different ideals of what that could be. Now, thankfully, this film never answers those questions, and that's what makes the concept so endearing. If you had never had another cube after this first one, I'm sure that this would be like a cult movie in the vein of something like John Carpenter's The Thing, where
Hmm.
everyone years later is still trying to ask the question: Is Child a thing, or is McCready a thing at the end? Who's a thing? Is there one of them? And it's one of those questions that John Carpenter has said he's been asked this a billion times, but it's the thing that keeps you guessing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this one had sequels, so people will put everything together. But that's one of the things that I really find fascinating about this film and how effective it is, because I could have done without having to have them explain all the other aspects to it and build onto the universe. Do we really need a universe for Cube? I don't think we did.
No.
But studios have to find ways to extend franchises to make more money and hopefully get audiences interested. But it kind of died fast. You said they were released every 2 years. So over the course
Yeah.
of 6 years, poof, and they were done with until the Japanese one came out, which I can't remember when that
I
came out.
think it was like 21 or something like that. Like it was pretty recent.
Yeah. Like I said, I found that without even realizing they had ever made it. It just I was at a horror convention and the distributor, the Blu-ray distributor was actually selling a special edition of it. So Cube, what the hell is when the hell did they do this? I usually know about all these type of movies, and I didn't know that they made this damn movie. So of course I had to buy it. So which for everyone out there, if you've never seen Cube, um, I would suggest doing a double feature of both the original Cube and the Japanese Cube first before watching the actual sequels. Um, I think that would be much better served than watching the original series and then watching the Japanese version. I think you should definitely watch those two simultaneously. They're very similar, but they're different. I really like what they did with it. So
Yeah, and like I said, I really like Cube Zero. I like the expansion on the universe and
mm-hmm.
how you see how like that like people deep at their core, as you can see in this one, are like you've got the whole mix of, are they inherently good or inherently evil? Are they going to help each other? Or are they going to
Mm-hmm.
push each other so they can be the ones at the top? And it kind of expands on that with, well, there's people monitoring this and watching it, and they literally do nothing about it the entire time this is happening. And it brings in some of that more existential stuff of like, why is it here?
Mm-hmm.
What is the purpose of this? And it goes with the whole like God thing, because like it becomes one of the questions of, do you believe in God? And they're like, well, nobody has ever answered yes at the end of this, so they don't know what happens.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's just, like I said, there's so many different quotes in this that are just, they hit really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like, uh, Worth says, we're both part of the system. I drew a box, you walk a beat. It's like you said Quentin is. Keep your head down, keep it simple. Just look
Mm-hmm.
at what's in front of you. I mean, nobody wants to see the bigger picture. Life's too complicated. And it ties in a lot to day everything. Like everyone's just like, well, just keep going. Just keep going through the day. Um, and there's just so much in this movie that you can look back on and it's just genius.
Yeah, and you bring up something that I touched upon it a little bit, but you bring it up even better when I said that it's those quiet moments when they stop and they have these conversations between each other that we get these amazing dialogue sequences. So between them going between the cubes, when they have these moments, no piece of dialogue is wasted in this movie.
It really isn't.
And this is a lot of characters that you had focus on, and you're just thrown in with all of them all at once. So as they're learning about each other, the audience is learning about each of them, and between these dialogue sequences, you're learning how different each of them are, which I thought was brilliant the way that it was conceived. Because of the way the film is, they literally just going through each cube, but then they have these moments or these moments where click, oh, we found out how to figure out which rooms are safe and which ones are not. But we've also had this conversation on the side about other things, and we learned about the characters because they're all different. This is not
Yeah.
a film where any one of these characters are the same as any other ones. They they have a very specific purpose, but they also have completely different personalities. And obviously they can't all work together. The one guy who decides that he wants to be in charge is actually his Achilles heel, which I actually love that aspect of him. Like he starts off the movie as being the leader when no one else wants to be the leader, and by the halfway point when we
Yeah.
introduce Kazan, and he's like he can't stand him because he's got mental issues. Oh, there's a complete shift.
Yeah, and it was one of the things that like I sat there watching the movie and I was like, is he really who he says he is? Because he seems a lot more evil than what was initially said. And it brings up talking points later on about like, yeah, he's talked about getting back to his three kids, and it turns out that he may or may not be abusive to his three
Uh-huh.
kids, and his wife is actually his ex-wife, and he might not actually even see his kids. But yeah, it's another quote that has to do with that is the comment between him and Worth, where he says, "Not all of us have luxury of playing nihilists," and Worth says, "Not all of us are conceited enough to play hero." And I'm like, man, it's because it really is a two-way street.
Worth has some great dialogue when he
Oh
starts
my
opening up.
gosh.
He has some great dialogue, and especially when he decides to help the nurse with Kazan. Um,
Yes.
he has a shift. At the very beginning, he doesn't really. He just sits there doing his own thing. He realizes what part he played in the building of the cube, but he feels like though it's all kind of a dead end. So he doesn't really help out. But when Kazan character is introduced, there seems to be a shift in his.
Yeah, it's like he goes from like being super guilty and realizing like I am a part of this and why this is a thing to, well, if I'm going to make amends, this is how I'm going to do it, and I'm going to at least get these people as far as I can, leave no man behind. And it's like I said, by the end of the movie, like you really see him as the hero, and knowing that he does not escape just to get Kazan out because he sees Kazan as worthy of escaping.
Whereas all the rest of them have their issues.
All of them have issues, or they just get violently murdered for no reason. Because, like, even the doctor is like slightly crazy, and she's like, "Big Brother did this.
Yeah,
Everything's set up for when you live to when you die."
I can't remember the one who kept thinking it would be aliens. But yeah, there's some crazy theories in here that are introduced at the very beginning. I was like, what? Okay, so are there any final thoughts that you'd like to say about Cube?
Ah, I'd say if you haven't seen it, it is probably one of the must-sees of horror. Uh, I hate that I waited so long to see it because it is genius. And you can see its influence on so many other films.
Mhm.
It's so well done. Like I said, I realize now that I have seen this director's other stuff and they're all so brilliant. But it is a great film to start off on.
All right. For me, I would like to just leave everyone with this, is, other than watch this version of Cube and then watch the Japanese remake before watching the sequels. I do want to say that watching the sequels does add a little bit to the world that was created when the Cube franchise started. If you want to know more about the world, then you should definitely watch all three. It makes for a good, I guess, a good trilogy, a triple feature. That's what I would say. A good triple feature if you want to try that. Your head may spin a little bit by the end, but it's going to be an interesting triple feature, which I can't say for all trilogies that are out
Yeah.
there. I honestly cannot. I love the fact that some of these films use math as a concept because we don't see that a lot. I love the fact that this film is really a very basically made film, and it does so much with so little, which
It
makes
really
it
does. It's
bigger.
so impressive.
It's really impressive. It looks bigger than it actually is. I had to do some reading before I realized how really small the actual production was. When I
Hmm.
first saw it, I didn't think it was that small. You read a little bit about these movies, and it's like, wow, you get impressed by some of the stuff that they accomplished. Um, but that's what I like to say about this film because there is a cult following of this film, so there's a lot of people out there who have seen this film already. But I hope that if you haven't seen this film, that you'll take a chance with Cube, watch it, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. It's it may not be as heady as Pie, it may not drive you nuts like Pie, but it's still a really great movie to enjoy, whether you're a horror fan or not. Actually, I think anyone can really enjoy this film. So,
Hmm.
with that, I want to thank you, Panazzo, for joining us on Conversations in Horror. For everyone else out there, you can watch or listen to a new episode of the podcast every Wednesday at 8 a.m. We love to have you. There's going to be a new film that we touch upon every Wednesday. We've done lots of previous films, so make sure to check out previous episodes. Make sure to like, subscribe, do that thing you do with your favorite podcast, as we have plenty of episodes coming up in the future. From everyone here at Something Wicked Entertainment, have a good day. Conversations in Horror is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures production, written, produced, and directed by Kevin L. Powers, executive producer Kelly A. Inoka. All contents and material from this episode of Conversations in Horror is copyright 2025 Broken Lighthouse Pictures.